Hello? Wow, I actually just realized that I was talking and I was on mute almost this whole entire time. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. That's entirely crazy because I actually thought I took myself off of mute. I actually thought I pushed the button on the headset and I did not. Well, just make sure you can confirm and you can hear me. I just want to make sure someone can comment there. My bad for that little error on my part, that little technical difficulty. If someone can just confirm, though, you should be able to hear me now. Confirm, confirm, testing, testing. All right, that's what I was talking about. I was just talking to myself a little bit, just talking about how this market was entirely crazy today, right? And so basically, what I was trying to spew out the fact is that we take days like this in which we ended up having a beautiful day today. Today was one of those days where you ended up buying puts and you just waited for it to go green. Even if it went into the red down 50%, you ended up holding those puts. You had about an 80% chance that it went green and you closed out for profits today. That's literally how easy today's price action was, right? And I actually sound like I'm actually selling a commercial right now. But that was a beautiful day. I gotta say, I mean, bottom line is that I actually give for days like we had today because you're not scraping for pennies. I think we've had a lot of days in which we've just been trading within range. And today was one of those beautiful kind of days. By the way, everyone that pretty much commented in that chat, I did call you out one by one, but I was on mute. But good afternoon, everyone, by the way. So, like I was just kind of getting back to, today was just a beautiful day in which we ended up having a beautiful trend type of action. And when you have these kind of trends in which the selling pressure just continues to mount, especially when you see a name like Tesla, that was a hell of a price action from Tesla. From up about $8 pre-market to just selling off and rolling over down about $9. About near $18 swing on Tesla. I could be wrong. Could be up to $20 on a swing from green to red. Absolutely disgusting price action on Tesla. One interesting thing that's actually going to be on my watch list tomorrow in terms of, I usually say, a rotation within a sector. Something that crossed my mind in which I'm obviously going to be watching for tomorrow, which I particularly do every day, but granted the fact that Tesla's been bleeding out these past few days, and also given the fact that Apple pretty much closed relatively flat, and I think it could have actually closed up a lot higher, but it was more so a broader market rally that we ended up having, right? In which a lot of different names ended up participating. I want to see if we end up rallying tomorrow on the back end of FOMC. Do we end up seeing a case in which Tesla and Apple actually lead the rally tomorrow? Is going to be something that I'm going to be watching and paying attention to, because obviously today was more of a broader market rally where it's likely going to be some laggers tomorrow. But in terms of your leaders, as Microsoft has been a leader these past 2 days here, right? We've seen a hell of a rally out of Microsoft the past 2, 3 days. I want to actually see if we see the rotation with Tesla bleeding out these past few days. Do we see a little bit of a shift in terms of that rotation? In which case, Tesla can actually lead the rally back to the upside. We can see it push up towards 166, which can easily be obtained, and then pushing up towards 172 should be that next pivotal level on Tesla. So that's going to be one that I definitely want to see at what given point we see a turning point basically for Tesla in terms of this relative weakness turning into relative strength as the market may attempt to actually push back to the upside tomorrow. All right. And why do I say we're going to end up pushing back to the upside tomorrow potentially? Well, structurally looking at SPY right now, I have an ascending channel that's pretty much constructed. And what is pretty much implied to me towards the end of the day is that one, we ended up closing above the 200-day EMA. That was pretty significant in terms of talking. Huh? Flex. Okay, never mind. My bad. All right, I saw your message a little late. My bad. But SPY pretty much closing above the 200-day EMA. That was pretty much a very relatively strong point in which I wanted to see end up happening towards the end of the day. Of course, we got the full-on gap fill, but what more significantly in terms of the structure is that that full-on gap fill hit right dead in the middle of this entire ascending channel. So the better part of this factor is that we held the upper band of this ascending channel is what I wanted to see, and also secondly was holding above the 200-day EMA that we were able to reclaim off of that low of the day. So those were the two significant things that ended up standing out to me. And then in terms of looking at structuring, in terms of saying the market's going to push tomorrow, is that we already saw a wild price action today. We do know that we have quad witching this week, which also, of course, implies market volatility. Not necessarily the day of, but it couldn't be in the entire week of. So I want to see us particularly. Everyone's been looking for this 420 mark. That's more so given the fact of where we held, where we stand, holding that upper band of this channel. I want to see if we end up reclaiming this high that we had from this pre-market, which was absolutely absurd. I want to see if we can end up pushing towards that 420 mark. Now, granted, there's a lot of people in social media that's been looking for that 420 mark. It does make it feel like it's not going to happen, but it does feel like we're also getting towards the end stage of this little rally that we've been in. This little bear market rally that we've been in since, what's the last bottom? October 13th, that we smacked 348 on the low. I believe that we're getting towards the end stage of this rally, in which we're already getting the effects of how squeezy this price action is getting, right? So that's where I'm particularly looking at. Okay, if it's already so squeezy, we're getting to the end stage of this rally. Maybe this is particularly the early Christmas rally that we've all been looking for. That's going to particularly supposed to end up happening towards the end of the month. But it's plausible that we're getting this rather earlier on. We get the FOMC, we get towards our endpoint, whether it be the end of the week, going maybe pushing in towards the beginning of the week. I believe that we push up towards that 420 mark, and of course the gap fill that's more pretty much more important is towards 421.22 to get that gap fill completed. All right. So that's what I'm going to gear towards. Is it entirely crazy is my question right now to say that we end up breaking this high, particularly tomorrow that we had this morning at 410.49, and we see about a near what 16 to 20 point move on SPY tomorrow? I don't think it's particularly insane, because obviously if we were all to have looked at today's price action this morning, and actually yesterday, if you thought that SPY would have moved near $10 today, obviously none of us would have expected that, right? I don't think we all expected that kind of rapid price action to happen, but so quickly, right? So that's just something that's kind of in the back of my mind. Am I saying that there's any plausible action for that to happen? No, but given the fact that it's a volatile week, we already saw volatility rather today, more so. I believe that if, especially with Powell coming into town tomorrow, as he's going to give us that rate number, then he's going to spew his dribble through his news conference. It's entirely possible if we end up breaking this high over 410.49, we're going to see this stretch rather very significantly, in which case that gap fill is not pretty much out of the question, particularly tomorrow, if this absolutely gets absurd and we see a strong gap fill to the upside tomorrow, and then we end up, or not necessarily a gap fill, but a gap up tomorrow, and then we see a heavy continuation on the back end of FOMC. All right. Now, normal typical market, if today was more so the volatility that we may end up seeing for the week, more so in terms of just the range that we traded today, then I would be plausible that, okay, by the end of the week, more so going into the beginning of next week, that we likely trade up to that 420. That would more so be more conservative, allow for more price action to develop, and then we see that nice little trend continue back to the upside. All right. But that's what I kind of wanted to kind of just take a moment to say. In terms of the lows in which we would potentially see a reversal back to the downside here, as we already saw a sell off more so, I'm going to watch to see if we can hold that 20 EMA, 396.42. Watch if we end up closing below that EMA tomorrow. That's going to be more significant. Right? If we close below the 396.42 tomorrow, then that can end up meaning the whole entire trend change. As we saw a strong gap up today, we're going to continue to see a little bit of a flip. We break down to the bottom end of this little channel that we have, and that may end up signifying more so the end of what has been a monstrous type of rally. All right, and that could be in the fact that, okay, now we're going to start to trade towards the bottom end of this channel. We can maybe retest down towards 388, and we'll see if we get a little bit of a micro rally towards the end of the month off of that low at the bottom of this channel for a Christmas rally. But if we end up getting back-to-back days in which we get monstrous day today, another monstrous day tomorrow, I believe that the Christmas rally is more so right here, right now, this particular week. So that's what I'm kind of trying to decipher right now. Is this really the Christmas rally that we may end up being seen this week? Or do we end up progressing tomorrow, closing below that 20 EMA, below 396.42, and then it's more so going to set it up to happen at a later time? That's where I'm more in the decisive moment of trying to pretty much decipher. But with FOMC tomorrow, obviously there's a lot of question marks that could be on the table right now. All right. So that's pretty much what's just kind of giving you a little bit of across my mind of what's just going on right there. Outside of that, like I think I mentioned, I wanted to see if there's going to be a rotation to Tesla and Apple to lead the day tomorrow. If we do see another rally, yet again, another gap up, another strong trend day to the upside, I want to see how that particularly is going to end up happening, right? And then also looking at the semis, Nvidia has been on an absolute tear, something that I should end up pointing out as well. But looking at the weekly on this, pretty much, actually, was it the weekly? I think it was the daily. Yeah. Okay, let's see why this ended up shifting. But we did end up breaking that downtrend resistance off of the daily here. Is more so what was more significant to me off of today's price action. So a strong move above that downtrend resistance, in which we're going to be pushing into relative resistance coming up towards 193. No, 193 and a quarter is what I'm looking at for your resistance on this. So could we potentially see more further upside as I'm talking about the market rally kind of continuing? That should end up seeing follow through. We should see this get up towards that 193, and that'll be a beautiful continuation on this one. But what's more significant, what I wanted to outline, is that beautiful downtrend break here off of the daily. So watch for continuation. Watch for this to hold 178 half. If it holds 178 half, watch to see if that's going to be a potential dip, buy the dip type of opportunity, and then you trade this up towards that 183 mark. The 193 mark is what I will be trading this up towards. All right. Let's see if there's any names then that you guys need to take a look at. Prachi, Moderna. Moderna was a monster. That was a newsletter play from last week, if I'm not mistaken, off memory. But that was a hell of a move that we ended up having off of that. The only thing is that I had a beautiful flag off of Moderna, right? There was a beautiful flag. You see the larger degree megaphone. But what ended up happening was a nice little fake out off of that little flag. So you had the fake out, you tapped that what this the 50-day EMA, you tapped it, you had a beautiful recovery and a strong gap up is what ended up happening. So what would I be looking at for now? I would look for a little bit more of a kind of a dip more so in terms of consolidation, if I want to say a better term. And I would look for this to pretty much retrace down towards 192. Watch for support at 192. Look to see if it can base at that 192 spot project. If it bases at 192, then I would look to see if you can get a nice little dip buy opportunity there at that 192 spot. I preferably get spreads on this on Moderna, especially because of how crazy this price action is and how volatile it can particularly be. I would look to get some spreads at that 192 level and look forward to base there and of course have a stop loss in place, right? If I were to say your stop out in terms of saying a level that it absolutely needs to hold for trend to continue to take place, this needs to hold above 188. So that is what I would say is going to be particularly your stop out. If you're looking to buy the dip at 192, look for your stop out at 188, and then watch for continuation to end up occurring over today's high as we close at that 197.54 mark. All right, it basically retraced 50% of that entire gap up that we ended up having from the high of the day. That was basically a 50% retracement that we had. So I would say watch for 192 to be your dip buy and watch to reclaim over that 197 half that we closed, and then you should get continuation to see if you can retest that week high up that 208. All right. You also mentioned EMPH. Isn't this the one that actually rolled over? I know quite a while back, I believe it was El Lobo that actually had me looking at this ticker quite a few times. A beautiful move, and I actually remember as well is that I was outlining this uptrend resistance. I remember that as it was pushing near that resistance, I was pretty much implying the fact that you see how quickly it's actually ended up wicking that uptrend resistance. And so that's what I was more plausible to say that you should end up taking your profits rather quickly as it approaches to that uptrend resistance. But a hell of a drop off, as you can see, had a nice little head and shoulders, gave you that nice little dip by, close enough towards that 200 EMA, but a hell of a snapback, a beautiful little uptrend still intact. More so, I would watch as long as this holds 319, this should remain to the upside here. Watch 319 to hold. As long as the 319 holds, then you're looking for continuation to occur over 336. All right. Of course, it's a wider range. It is it rather moves a lot in terms of the range. So I would watch for the breakout over 336. But as you push over 336 here, I would pretty much be cautious about taking profits right around this 348, 349 mark. As you push into that uptrend resistance, I would look to rather be very quick to take your profits. All right. Let's see what else. Lobo's talking about Netflix. Let's see what's going on with Netflix. Netflix has been on an absolute tear. I actually thought that I had this charted out. I know that I had levels on here, and I'm absolutely not sure why it's not on here. But I actually had this pushing up right around up towards this 348 mark is what I was watching. So I actually had this target in 348. I don't know why that mark is not there anymore. I'm just going to roughly put it there so you can see the illustration. But I have this pushing up towards 348, close enough to 349. As of course, the mental target here is going to be that 350 mark for everyone. Above, once we cross that 300 mark, everyone was watching this gap fill to be completed. The gap fills at 339.22. I believe that gap fill is going to be, well, we actually pretty much tapped that gap fill today. 332.72. And yeah, we basically breached right over that gap fill before we ended up progressing rather heavily today. But I expect further continuation on this. Basically, is more so what I assume that you're kind of looking for. I believe that as long as you end up holding for this 314 mark, as long as 314 holds, you should get the continuation. I would not be surprised if you get a little bit of a pretty much a little drop off and we ended up looking for that 314 to be a potential buy the dip type of opportunity. I would watch that. Otherwise, to be a little bit more conservative, if we don't get any kind of volatility back to the downside, we don't see any kind of significant drop off. I believe this holds 317 and a quarter, and you should see a rather swift movement right back into the green. If we end up opening red around that 317, more so to say, I would watch 317 and a quarter. You get the continuation, and I believe this is going to be a straight ride up towards 348. It's just going to be a matter of what I said earlier. Do we get the Christmas rally in which we're going to see much larger degree moves to the upside, as we already saw this morning? Or does FOMC kind of hold us back and then we see the continuation within maybe next week or the week after, right? But like I said, 317 and a quarter, you watch for your continuation to take out today's high. Otherwise, you get a little bit more of a drop off. Watch 316 is your support level to keep in a watch for the overall uptrend to remain intact. All right. So that's pretty much the levels for Netflix. I really do like Netflix though. I believe that the rally isn't completed just yet. Even though we completed that gap fill, I believe it has a little bit more juice in the tank. 348, close enough to 349. You take your profits there and you run with it. All right. Let's see what else is on the radar that we can maybe take a look at. You can also keep an eye on Amazon here, watching this one over 97. If you can get a break over 97 here, I would look to get a nice little push. You're going to get some minor resistance right around this 9, close enough to about 99 half is where you're going to get some resistance. But 97 to 99 half, I believe that's about a $2.50 move. I believe that's a beautiful scalp. And then you hold some runners to see if you can get a continuation or extend that push into that 50-day EMA at 100.58. All right, so that's another one. It's roughly about a $2.50 move. I don't think it really gets too much explosive on Amazon. If it really did get more explosive, I believe that larger degree move would actually happen over the 50-day EMA, over the $100 mark, in which case we'll be targeting to test the gap fill, and everyone's going to be looking for the gap fill to be tested, and that would be a larger daily type of breakout. All right. So that's something that, I mean, distinguishing whether it's about $2.50 move that I'm kind of targeting versus whether it's going to be a larger degree breakout in which I'm sure that daily candle is going to rather signify, and you'll see that break over that 50-day EMA, and you'll be targeting to test the gap fill at 105. All right. So that's another one you can keep an eye on. But as I kind of glanced over a few names, Tesla, looking at EMPH, looking at Netflix. I did look at also Amazon here. So quite a few names. The bigger thing is too is also that all the volatility that we had, and so to say that we ended up trading in such a wide range. I believe tomorrow's going to be another day where we trade another wide range. It's just that obviously the question mark is it going to be to the upside or is it going to be back to the downside? All right. So that's pretty much the bigger question. But other than that, I don't think there's too much else that I can pretty much imply to say. My bigger question mark, and which I'm pretty much leaning towards, is that we trade up towards 420. And I'm going to see exactly if do we see the extension of how significant a rally is going to be tomorrow. If we snap back and recover all of today's sell-off, or do we end up breaking down towards that 396 mark? As I was mentioning, will be a rather significant level to watch if we end up regressing further than we did today. All right. Other than that, though, I will pretty much conclude today's session with that. Appreciate you guys.